Now, between Kenya and the United States of America, there was about $1 billion of trade. That was in 2018. That is about 100 billion rather, Kenya shillings. To discuss just how these U.S. trade relations with Kenya are going to be moved forward, of American Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Right. We can start with, where are the Kenya-U.S. trade relations as at now?
Right. Like you rightly said, last year we saw about 100 billion Kenya shillings in terms of two-way trade between Kenya and the U.S. I think our trade relationship is growing. There's been quite a bit of interest in this market, if you look at it from an inbound perspective, from an investment perspective. And as you know, AGOA still remains a key trade regime where we are seeing a bit of growth over the last couple of years in terms of what is being exported from Kenya to the US, primarily around textile and apparel. There's a bit of fruit and horticultural products as well,
okay,
and many more.
All right.
Yeah.
And what are these, just give us an overview of the exports vis-a-vis the imports that are going to the US and of course coming in.
All right. So I've talked about some of the imports, some of the exports,
yeah.
You know, being around, you know, fresh fruit, nuts. Apparel is a key export product from Kenya. We're talking about close to 60% of the export product from Kenya to the US is actually apparel. From an import perspective, we see a lot of electronics. There's some cereal, you know, some of these packaged goods that come in from the US as well. Aviation as well. The jet engines and the like are part of what we get from the US.
Okay.
Yeah.
And talking about now the AGOA, the trade agreement between, of course, Kenya and the US that we signed, just what have the benefits been this far?
I think as you know, the AGOA is a preferential trade agreement that allows for export of goods to the US within certain tariff lines. And I think the key thing is opening up of that market and removing the tariff barriers to allow ease of you know, export into the US market. So that, I think, has spanned opportunities, especially for some of our smaller businesses, those who are in, for example, the production of nuts, you know, apparel as well. And I think this is something that for the remaining period of the AGOA trade regime, we should be able to see quite a bit of activity around. Yeah.
Okay. Now, that particular agreement ends in 2025. What happens in 2025 when it ends? How are we going to retain the market that we've already established?
Well, that's a good question. That's a really good question. And one of the things that I know is happening, as you know, sometime last year, I think it was end of August, our president, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, did have a meeting with President Donald Trump in White House. And two things happened as a result of that relating to Kenya's relationship with the US. One is that our relationship with the US was elevated to what they call a strategic partnership. And as a result of that, then there was this formation, an initiative called the Trade and Investment Working Group that primarily is structured to try and figure out what can we do substantively from a trade and investment perspective going forward. And so I know that we know as a chamber, and I think this is public information, that Kenya is one of those countries that were sort of identified as a potential model for a free trade agreement with the US.
Right.
And I believe that's part of the discussions that are being held, just to try and figure out the modalities around that and whether or not, you know, it could be the next level of engagement beyond AGOA. Yeah.
And even as we head to 2025, what will happen? Because Kenya is, and largely most of Africa, is looking east. Do you think that this particular newfound relationship with China maybe is going to affect the relationship with US, considering the US-China trade wars that have been ongoing?
Well, I mean, we wait to see what happens with the trade wars. I think that's something that is unfolding as we speak.
Okay.
And I also think that it may be something that is maybe a regime issue, So we should perhaps at this point, start taking hard positions around it.
All right.
As far as, trade is concerned, as you know, really business is about opportunities, and business will tend to follow where opportunity is.
Right.
The space is big enough. There's space for everybody to participate, and I really don't think that we will see necessarily a decline. I actually think that there will be an increase in our trade between Kenya and the US.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. The direct flights from JKIA, of course, to New York, that the agreement happened and it's already ongoing. Do you think that it has had any impact on business back and forth?
Well, it's almost a year down the road. I can only speak about this from the perspective of what we see in terms of the ability for there to be more business interactions.
Right.
I would imagine that there's a bit of that happening because of the accessibility and the ease with which business executives can move back and forth between Kenya and the US. I mean, it's a 14-hour, 15-hour flight. It literally means you can leave here at 11 p.m. in the night, and you're in New York the following day early in the morning. So if you're a businessman, one of your currency is time.
Time, for sure.
And so something like this then gives efficiency. And incidentally, the first return flight after the inaugural flight to New York was actually a group of American companies that came to Kenya from the state of Florida. Okay. And so we've seen quite a bit of movement back and forth, and I think certainly the direct flights are helping, supporting that. Yeah.
All right. And how about tourism, with the US being one of the biggest contributors to Kenya's tourism sector?
Yeah.
Yeah. How does that look maybe in the near future?
Well, I imagine that it can only grow. The whole tourism, cultural exchange, education exchange, with the opening up of the direct flights, in our view, can only be stronger, can only be better. Okay. I think there's a lot more that we can do in terms of just promoting Kenya, promoting its unique position within Africa, its diversity. Just telling the right story, taking out the narrative out there, and really being able to, reach to the greater American population. I think we should be able to see a lot more tourists coming in.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, the tourism sector is going to grow from that. And talking about now investments from the US coming into the country, where are we right now? Well,
I think we're doing okay.
Okay.
We're doing okay, and I'm being a bit modest here.
Okay.
I can tell you for certain that over the last 12 or so months, we've had 4 American multinationals actually set up offices here. Cigna, Abbott, ATC, which is American Tower Corporation, and Cotiva, which is a big, chemical, agrochemical company, have set up regional offices in Kenya. So that, in terms of new investment into the country, I think that can only get better. We have the likes of, Coca-Cola, the likes of Del Monte, and so on, who are actually, and Mars Wrigley as well, who've set up, actually invested more in Kenya, something to the tune of combined about $145 million US over the last couple of months. Oh. As you know, these companies employ thousands of people directly and indirectly, impact the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. So I think the future can only be bright, and the interest is there. It's really for us to be able to take advantage of this interest and make sure that we're able to get the right investment, create the right business climate to allow for more of this investment to come in.
Yeah. Now, you've just mentioned the business climate. Do you think Kenya is doing enough to make, of course, ease of doing business much better, especially for such companies, the multinationals?
We are doing okay. We're doing okay. There's quite a bit of attention that has gone to easing out, some of the trade barriers that have been there. If you look at, for example, I think a big challenge that has been recently that now seems to be resolved or is in the process of being resolved is, of course, the challenges at the port when it comes to customs clearance and procedures. I think the government's move to reduce the number of agencies involved in that process from 27 to 4 will definitely bring in the efficiencies that we want. Of course, the investment in infrastructure. As you know, infrastructure is a key, especially infrastructure relating to logistics, is a key input and a cost driver when it comes to production and movement of goods to and fro.
Right.
So some of these initiatives, together with the president's championing of the fight against graft and counterfeits, is something that definitely will augur well for us from driving investment, greater investment into the country. I think if some of these issues are resolved, then we can only see more investment coming into Kenya.
Right. And what is the way forward? What more can we look forward to in terms of this relationship between US and Kenya?
Yeah. If you ask me, I think the future is bright. US companies want to invest in Kenya for various reasons. One being the fact that this is the strongest economy this side of Africa.
Right.
Yeah, centrally located, 5 hours from any tip of Africa. The sort of skilled workforce that we have, the opportunities that are available across all manner of sectors, the peace and security that we enjoy. We don't talk a lot about our great weather. It's something that
it's an asset for
sure. It is an asset for sure. So if we continue doing what we are doing, sort out our infrastructure, sort out this whole corruption, challenges that we have, be able to streamline some of these business climate issues, I think we can only see much more interest and investment from the US private sector.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what can Kenyans do to ensure that even their products can get to because the standards are very high in the US. What can Kenyans do to make sure that they meet those standards, even including the government itself, just assisting Kenyans to get there?
Yeah, I'm thinking that this is more a private sector responsibility.
Okay.
I think the government really is about creating an enabling environment, negotiating some of these trade treaties and so on. But from a private sector perspective, I think one thing that can be done is just creating the right linkages and partnerships, which is what we do as a chamber as well. Okay. Connecting Kenyan businesses to partners in the US, and the result of that, of course, is the skills transfer, the fine-tuning of processes and structures within organizations, and I think this then ultimately raises the standard of whether it's quality of the products that we do, the sort of institutions that we have, because they have to conform to a certain standard that would then, enable them to be able to export and trade with the US effectively. So, I mean, there's so much that can be said around that, but I think that's one area where we can, very quickly realize some wins. And the interest, like I said, is there from both sides. So it's just a matter of creating a handshake, so to speak, to ensure that this can happen.
Right. And how can this handshake be created now?
Well, we have platforms. We have some great platforms that we've created, and here specifically we have the American Chamber. We call it the AmCham Business Summit, that will be hosting on the 4th and 5th of November, and this is really a business engagement platform that brings together Kenyan private sector, the American private sector, or the greater East Africa private sector, because multinationals tend to look at Kenya as an economic hub and a gateway
to the region.
The US government, Kenya government, and the attendant governments as well, to really dialogue around policy issues that need to be resolved, or policy changes that need to be effected. But more importantly, like I said, it's a business engagement platform. So when you come there as a business, you expect to meet like-minded businesses from the US private sector, from the region as well that you can work together with to realize your business objectives. So I would encourage any Kenyan business out there to look up our summit. The registration is open right now at amchambiz.com, bizsummit.com, amchambizsummit.com.
Summit.com.
Yes,
right.
.com. Register to participate. We expect over 500 delegates. And last year we had President Uhuru Kenyatta actually officiate as chief guest. And we had over 140 companies, both local and American companies, participate. We had a huge delegation of about 70 visiting, a mix of private companies and US government as well. And we expect the same level of participation this year.
Right.
So that's an example of a platform that we use to just promote that whole trade and investment aspect of what we do. But then directly as a chamber as well, there's opportunity for Kenyan companies to just come up to us and engage with us and see how we can support their business efforts to get into the US market. Of course, we work very closely with the State Department for Trade through its various agencies, Can Invest and the likes of EPC, to also see how we can help them realize gains around the trade and investment between Kenya and the US.
Right, so the opportunity is huge.
Oh yeah, the opportunity is there.
And they should take advantage of it.
And they should take advantage of it. They should take advantage of it.
All right.
Yeah.
So just as we close, what would you like to say about the US-Kenya relations moving forward? Where are we headed now?
The future is bright. Yeah. I think Kenya has a great opportunity at this point in time, given the renewed focus on Africa, through the US government's initiative called Prosper Africa, which is really a whole of government initiative to promote more trade and investment with Africa. And as you're aware, and I think I mentioned this before, is that Kenya is one of those few countries in Africa where the US has actually elevated its relationship to a strategic one, which basically means that they are looking at Kenya as a model country that they can engage in a much more substantive manner to enhance two-way trade and investment. So it's not just about inbound; it's also about outbound.
Right.
So talk to us if you're a business out there, and we'll be happy to provide the support.
Okay, thank you very much, Maxwell, for just bringing more light into our relations with the US.
Thank you very much, Betty.
Asante. Now that was Maxwell Okello, the Chief Executive Officer of the American Chamber of Commerce Kenyan chapter, just discussing the US-Kenya trade relations and how we can forge that relationship forward.